Alright, we're going to continue where we left off. So far we have this, it's a solid pipe, 3D solid. And then we exploded this bracket so we could get this surface to use to slice this solid. So we're going to keep that as surfaces for now, because we're going to need this again in just a minute. So first thing we want to do is go to your layers, and then we're going to toggle all of our layers back on using this button. It's just called the Turn All Layers On button. So we're going to turn all the layers back on. Boom, we got our bike back. All of that 2D stuff. Now we can see our progress starting to look pretty good. So what we're going to focus on in this lesson is this area here. It's going to be one kind of oblong pipe. So an oval shaped pipe. So we're going to isolate just these layers that we need to look at for now. So go back to your layers and click on the isolate button. And we're going to click any object within those three layers. So we want to have this layer selected, which is the red lines. We want to have the center line selected, and we want any part of our 3D frame layer selected. And press enter. Alright, now we're going to draw a line first. So we're going to just grab our line tool here. I think this will work in the current UCS. We'll find out. So click on the line tool, and we want to draw starting on any point of this line, but you'll see there's no snap here, so we need to force it to find a spot anywhere on this line to start our line. We're going to hold the shift key down and then right click. It's not a left click but a right click, and then we're going to find from the list here the nearest option. So nearest, I click on that to choose that. This will give us a snap point nearest to where our cursor is on this line. So we're going to click somewhere about right here. We want our line to end perpendicular with this other line. So we want a nice 90-degree angle coming off of the red line and then attaching to the other line perpendicular. So again, that's another snap. So we're going to hold the shift key down and then right click. Choose from the menu here perpendicular, and then as you hover close to that red line, it will give you that snap. So you want to click there when that green symbol appears. Press escape. Alright, now we're going to use this line to snap our UCS to it. Actually, we could use either this line or this line now, it doesn't matter. But we want our drawing to plane to be on this line, but perpendicular to these lines here. So it'll all make sense in just a minute. So we need to grab our UCS tool here, and then we're going to choose Object from the menu. And we're going to hover over, let's choose this line here, yellow. Let's see how this is aligned here. So that did us no good. See how all these directions are kind of random? So we want to force it to be parallel with something, so we're going to have to choose one of these lines. So let's go back to the UCS tool, choose Object from the menu. We're going to click on this line here. So now our X and Y are back to this drawing plane that we started with. So if we zoom out, our X and Y are here. So we'd be drawing on this surface. So if I drew a circle right now, this point out, again, we have the same problem that we had before. If I extruded this circle, I can only extrude it on the x-axis, so it would be extruding in the wrong direction. So I need to rotate my UCS on Y again to get Z lined up with this line. So I'm going to delete this circle. And then we need to rotate our UCS. So I'm going to click this button here. Y I think is the default, but we're going to go ahead and choose it anyway to make sure it's rotating on Y. And again, you can either use the dotted green line to snap, or just click enter to accept the default. Now our drawing plane is snapped to right here where the end point of the line was. And if you want it to be right where your drawing plane is going to be, you could just, at this point, you could just pick up the UCS. So I'm going to click on it one time to highlight it blue. I'm going to grab it from the base and then move it. I'm not changing the direction of any of the X, Y, or Z. I'm just moving the drawing plane to this point. So as you orbit, you can see your drawing plane is right where your yellow line is right now. Just makes it easier to visually see what you're doing. Alright, now we're ready to model our circle. I'm actually going to hide, I'm not going to hide it, but I'm just going to move this back over to just this random point over here on the left, because right now it's kind of in the way. So I want to still view it, but I just want it over where it should be. So I'm going to show the UCS icon, but it's going to go back over here. It didn't change any of the UCS, it just moved the icon to be in the lower left hand corner out of the way of my drawing area. Alright, so I still have my yellow line here. I want to draw a circle. The center point starting right here at the end point of that yellow line. So I'm going to click here to start my circle, and I want the radius to be 14. Right now I want the edge of this circle to actually start over here. So I want it to be touching the red line. So this side of the circle over here on the red line. So I need to move my circle over just a little bit. So I'm going to use the move tool here. And it's asking me to select the objects I want to move. I want to move this circle. So select it and press enter. Then I want to move it from this quadrant, which is not showing up, to this line. So I haven't clicked anything yet. So I need to use the shift right click method to choose quadrant from the menu. So you can see on the symbol here that it divides the circle into 4 different quadrants. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to hover over the edge of the circle and click on this quadrant to pick it up from this point. And then I want to snap it to this line here. So I'm going to do that process one more time just to show you the importance of where you pick up the object you want to move. So I'm going to do Control Z to undo. Move tool. Select the object I want to move. Enter. And so let's say shift right click. I'll just choose quadrant here. And if I didn't plan ahead and just grabbed it by this quadrant, and I'd be guessing right now. Oh no, my battery's running low. Of course. Give me 1 second to plug in. Okay, we're back. Alright, so it's important that you plan ahead before you move something. If you're trying to move it and have a specific side or part of that object snap to another part of your drawing, it's important where you pick up that object. So I'm going to escape out of that. So move this circle, enter. I'm going to shift right click, quadrant, pick it up from this quadrant, and then snap it over here. Alright, next thing I want to do is mirror this same circle over here. It's going to be faster than drawing the circle and then moving another circle. So the mirror is found in the modified group in that drop menu. It's the two triangles side by side. So I'm going to click on that to start the mirror and select the objects that you want to mirror. I'm going to mirror this circle, enter. And then the point of a mirror line is you're creating the midpoint, kind of the dividing line of the wall. So I want to mirror what's on this side of the wall on the other side of the wall. So you're creating the wall that you want to mirror along. So I don't want it to be this purple line because that's not on my drawing plane. Even though it looks like it is, it's not. Right now this would be in the Z axis. So your mirror line has to be on either the X or Y axis. So I'm going to choose a point on here. It's going to be the midpoint of this yellow line. So I could either use this intersect, or I want to make sure it's the midpoint of the yellow line. So I'm going to shift right click and choose the midpoint option. Hover over my line here. It gives that triangle, the green triangle. I'm going to click there. So that's the beginning of my mirror line, and I want it to mirror along this axis. It's a polar 90 degree from where I snapped. Actually, it's not. Let's see. I'm trying to see a view if you could see where we're snapping to here. So that is the snap line. It's at 180 degrees that way, or you could also put your cursor this way, which would be 0 degrees. Doesn't make any sense. But in any case, you want it on this line. Do you want to erase your source object? So I've mirrored it. Do I want to keep the original or not? I want to keep it, so I don't want to erase it. I'm going to click no. I'm going to orbit just to make sure that that happened correctly. You should have a nice pair of goggles going on here. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to connect the top and bottom quadrants with a line. And I already know that the object snap for quadrants isn't automatically turned on. I have to do the shift right click thing. So first thing I'm going to do is check what my object snaps are. So your object snap button is down here. So this toggles that ability on and off. So if I click it off and I'm in a drawing tool, there would be no snaps. You'd just be kind of freehanding it. So with the snaps on, if I'm in a drawing tool, it will specify from a list of snaps, and there's you can enable defaults by clicking on this arrow next to this button. So right now you can see the snaps that I have already turned on are end point, center point, and intersection and extension. So we have already tried to use quadrant and had to do the shift right click thing, so I'm just going to enable that. While I'm in here, I'm going to enable midpoint and perpendicular. We've had to do the shift right click for all of those so far in this lesson. So I'm just going to enable those so it's easier next time. So I'm done selecting those. You can just click anywhere to get out of that. So we're going to draw a line, just a single line. So I'm just going to use the line tool. I'm going to start at this quadrant, connect it to the other top quadrant here. Then I want to draw another line from this quadrant on the bottom, attach it to the other quadrant. And make sure you don't snap to that line accidentally. So if you need to orbit to see the bottom quadrant, click. Alright, now we need to trim a bunch of this stuff out of here. So I'm going to use the trim tool here, and with the trim tool you want to select the objects you want. Well, this is tricky. It's saying select objects, but it doesn't specify what you're selecting, but you're actually selecting the cutting lines. So you're not selecting the things you want to trim, you're actually selecting what things are kind of lines that will cut your other lines. So if you don't select anything, it will just default to every line as a cutting line, which can be convenience in this case because we don't need to limit that. So I'm just going to press enter. And then now you can just hover over the areas that you want to get rid of. That didn't work. So let's try that again. This time we're going to choose some lines. So trim. We want to use this line and this line. And we're going to press enter. And now we're going to get rid of this half and this half. So now we have our shape. So we're done trimming. You can press escape. Now we have several different individual lines that we need to connect together. So with lines, that's called joining. So we need to join these things together. There's going to be 4 objects here. So join. There is a button for join. It's in the modify group. It's these 2 arrows pointing towards each other. If you like to use buttons, there's a button. Or you could just type in join. Select your objects that you want to join. So we want this, all the 2 lines and then the 2 half circles. Make sure they're all selected and press enter. It should say 4 objects converted to 1 polyline. You can hover over it just to make sure it's all one thing. Now to practice what we went through the last exercise, we're going to offset this shape. So I'm going to go to the offset tool, specify the distance, and if you haven't offset anything else, it should already be set to 0.7, which is what we used for the seat pole. So we're going to leave it at 0.7, the distance. So I'm just going to press enter to accept that distance. Now you want to select your object that you want to offset. I want to offset this object, and then you would be choosing either in or out. Do I want to offset in or out? I want to offset in. So I'm going to click on the inside. And I'm done offsetting objects. It's still in the command right now, assuming that maybe you want to offset this again, but we don't. So we're going to escape to get out of the offset command. And now we're going to make these 2 shapes a region, both of them. Now this is something that some of you got hung up with, so we're going to just do this again as review. So we're going to region, REGION, enter, make a selection window and select both, enter. So now what's confusing here is there's actually 2 regions. there's this region, which is this entire space, not just the outer edge. It's like the entire thing. And then there's also this region here, which is just covering the inside. So keep that in mind when you go through the next steps here. So we want to subtract the inside shape from the outside. So we're going to go into the subtract. There's a button for that. We learned in the last lesson. It's over here. That's solid subtract. And it also works for regions, come to find out. So you can click this button or just type in subtract. And it's asking to select objects, but with this command you want to actually it says select solid surfaces and regions to subtract from. So we want to subtract from the larger region. So I'm going to click on the outer region. I'm done selecting objects to subtract from. So I want to press enter. And now it wants to select the region to subtract. So I want to subtract the inside. Now selecting this could be a little bit tricky. The quickest way to do this is just to select everything, or both regions. So I'm going to select both of them. But I didn't want the outer region selected. I only wanted the inner one selected. So hold the shift key down and click the outer region to remove it from the selection. So shift click after you've selected something removes it from the selection. So now I have the inner region selected as the thing that we're going to subtract from the other object. So I'm going to press enter. So now we have a region to extrude. And before we do that, I'm going to try to make this easier on us by moving this beyond the bracket first before we extrude it. That way we don't have to extrude it twice. So if we left it here, I'd have to extrude it this way and then use the face extrusion tool to extrude it this way. But we're just going to move it first and then extrude it one direction. So in order to do that, we're going to use the move tool, select the object, enter, specify base point. The base point doesn't really matter because we're not snapping it to anything, we're just moving it in a particular direction. So you could click anywhere, but we're going to just choose a point on here, any point on the object. And we're going to be moving it in the Z direction. Remember, our XY was what we were drawing on, and the Z is the direction we're extruding. And so you want to make sure you use that. Hold on a second, my computer's doing something. Oh boy. Okay, I'm just going to use the hand tool real quick. So we want to drop it somewhere using this dotted green line, somewhere beyond the bracket, but make sure you don't accidentally snap to this purple line. You want the green line that says Z. My computer's doing all kinds of stuff. Okay. Sorry about that. Make sure I'm going to zoom in here. Make sure you have that green dotted line that says Z. As long as it's beyond the bracket, anywhere on that line we're going to click. So now we've placed our region beyond the bracket. Now we're ready to extrude it. So I'm going to zoom out and orbit to some good view here. Now I'm going to go to solid, just to make sure it extrudes as a solid. It should. But I'm going to go to solid, extrude, select my object, enter, and then we're going to extrude it all the way past this red line over here. So if you don't go past it, Well, it doesn't really matter. We're going to just go past. So anywhere beyond that. So click there. Now we're going to orbit just to see what we've created. Alright, and we have a surface here we can use to trim this side. So we're going to go ahead and use that surface. And we're going to slice our solid. So click slice. Choose the object that we just created. It's a solid. Press enter. And then we need to choose surface from the menu. We're going to use a surface as our slicing barrier, or whatever you call it. So surface. We're going to click on this surface here as our slicing surface. If you need to zoom in, make sure you got it there. And then once you've clicked on it, it's asking, do you want to keep both sides? Or you would be clicking on the side that you want to keep, or you have the option to keep both sides. So I'm going to click on this side that I want to keep. It's going to automatically delete the other side. So we successfully sliced our solid. It's still a solid, but it terminates right here on that surface boundary. Pretty sure that's all we're going to get through today, so hopefully you were successful in doing this part. In our next lesson, we're going to start over here so we can model this stuff and then eventually trim this. So for now, it's just sticking out there.